Mark Oz Geist. Mark Geist is the best-selling co-author of 13 Hours, the inside account of what really happened in Benghazi. A security and military consultant, he is credited with saving 25 people in the attack on Benghazi. He is a native of Colorado and joined the United States Marine Corps in 1984. During his time in the service, he served in barracks duty in the Philippines, then with the 2nd Battalion, 9th Marines Gulf Company, as well as the Surveillance and Target Acquisition Platoon. He was then chosen to serve in the newly formed Marine Cadre program as the anti-counterterrorism instructor. Mark then changed his military occupational specialty to the intelligence field, specializing in interrogation translation. He attended language school where he studied Persian Farsi. After 12 years in the United States Marine Corps, Mark became a deputy sheriff in Teller County, Colorado. In that role, he was assigned as a liaison with the Vice Narcotics and Intelligence Unit in Colorado Springs, as well as an investigator for crimes against children. He then took a job as chief of police in Fowler, Colorado. After leaving the Fowler Police Department, Mark began his own business in private investigation, as well as bounty hunting and bail bonds. In 2004, Mark began doing contract security work in Iraq. He's worked for USIS, the United States Investigative Services, training Iraqi SWAT teams and personal security details. He also served as an advisor to the personal security detail of the former Prime Minister of Iraq. He is a member of the Annex security team that fought the Battle of Benghazi, Libya from September 11 to September 12 of 2012. Mark finished his career as a security contractor in Benghazi, Libya, where he was credited with helping save the lives of more than 25 Americans. He is still recovering from the injuries he sustained in that battle. He is a co-author of the best-selling book 13 Hours, the inside account of what really happened in Benghazi. And please welcome him to Neenah.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. I got to follow Greg Stubing, though. Come on. I mean, what an American hero. And isn't it awesome how the Lord works in our lives in the most unexpected ways? He teaches us lessons, doesn't he? Always when we're not expecting them. Taught me a lesson a lot of times throughout my life, but a big one on September 11th, 2012. Sitting on top of a rooftop thinking I'm invincible, he drops 3 81 millimeter mortars about 15 feet from me. 81 millimeter mortar, it has a kill radius of about 132 feet. Means if you're within 132 feet, you have about a 98% chance of dying from it. I was within 15 to 17 feet of 3 of them. The blast went through me and killed Ty and Glenn on the opposite side of me. A lot of people sit there and question, well, why would that happen? Why him? Why them? Do I carry survivor's guilt? And I don't, and the only reason I don't is because of the Lord, because I know the Lord has a purpose for everything he does, whether it's good or bad, and he puts things in our lives that we would never expect, just like Greg and the medic and that interaction that they had through that time. Kevin went into my background a little bit. My hero was my grandfather. He was a World War II vet, had 5 Purple Hearts, a Silver Star, Bronze Star. Fought in North Africa, fought in the Battle of the Bulge across Germany, stayed for the occupation of Germany, came back to Fort Carson in Colorado, and that's where he met my grandmother. Had 3 uncles that served during Vietnam, 1 in the Marine Corps, 2 in the Navy. So I knew what I was going to do, because I grew up in a small town out in eastern Colorado. When people ask me where I live, where I grew up, I always tell them it's where the buffalo roam. It's where that short grass prairie is. That's where I grew up, was where the buffalo roam. But I loved it. I mean, I was rodeoed, cowboyed. That's what I was going to do, or join the Marine Corps. And When I went in and talked to the recruiter, he said, hey, what do you want to do? And I said, what can I do? He says, you can do anything in the Marine Corps you want. I'm like, good, I want to jump out of airplanes, blow things up, and shoot things. He says, well, I've got a job for you. It's called the infantry. And I'm like, awesome, okay. But it was the greatest time of my life. I mean, I got to play soldier every day. I got to serve my country. I got to be a part of something much bigger than myself and make a difference in other people's lives. I went on from there, as you said, I was in law enforcement. I was ended up in Benghazi with 5 other team members that I'd never worked with. We knew each other, most of us, or knew of each other, but we never worked together as a team. That was the difference as a private security contractor. We didn't necessarily all travel as a team. I showed up. Some of them had already been there. We just had to meld together. It was that you had to be that professional. You had to overcome those differences. You had to hug a turd sometimes. But we had it was 5 of the greatest guys I could have ever been with, because they were the ones who needed to be there, because the Lord put them there. That night started a lot like most every night. I mean, we didn't work. I worked for a group called GRS, which is Global Response Staff. Our job was to protect CIA case officers in some of the worst parts of the world. They didn't send us to the Bahamas. I was really hoping they would. I thought that was on the recruitment video, but they didn't send us to those nice places. They sent us to the worst places in the world. I joke about it. People says, what countries have you been in? And I say, if it ends in the word stand, I've probably been there. Afghanistan, Pakistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, all those wonderful stand countries. And that's what we did, is we'd move in 1 or 2 at a time. We'd be out, like that night I was out with a female case officer. We were having a dinner date with a local Libyan couple when I got a call from Tyrone that said, hey, you need to get back to the annex, stay away from the consulate. And I knew it was a pretty bad situation, because he would never call and interrupt a dinner date. And so we got interrupted the female case officer in her work, got her in the car, and turned on our secure comms and headed out the gate to get back to the annex. And that's when we heard what was wrong and what was going on. And it was the sound of gunfire coming over the radio. You could hear the mortars, not the mortars, you could hear the rockets. And you could hear the people's voices and the fear in the State Department personnel, because they were getting overran by 40 armed insurgents. And you really knew it was bad when the team leader came over the radio and said, if you don't get here now, we're all going to die. And there was a few expletives in there, obviously, because you could hear the fear and what's scare and being that fear that comes about, as Greg said, when you're wishing that your mom was there with you. You were wishing that you weren't where you were at. Well, to get back to the annex, I could have went straight past the consulate, but that wouldn't have been a smart idea, because that's where everything was going on. So we headed west up the coast, cut back into the desert, and come back through. And right as we were just about there, we only need to make another couple turns. Right in front of us, 2 cars pull up, and about 6 or 8 guys jump out with AK-47s. And they're setting up a roadblock. Well, this blonde-haired, blue-eyed gringo, it has a hard time fitting in up close against a lot of the Arabs, right? I don't kind of fit the profile. My female case officer, she was doing okay. She's Arab descent, U.S. citizen, but she's Arab descent. She could fit in just fine. She could speak Arabic fluently. And as we're just getting ready to pull up, I'm sitting there thinking, what are we going to do and how we're going to handle this situation? Because there's no backup. It's just me and her. And again, the Lord interdicted that night. The car in front of me, instead of stopping for him, kept driving through, and all of them turned and looked that direction to follow that car. Well, I saw my opening. I took a real quick right turn, cut across the corner of the desert where that intersection was without them seeing me, and made it back. Went down, took another left, down, took another right, and we was able to make it back to the annex. I pulled into the annex, and we got about 20-some people. Excuse me. We got about 20-some people in our facility. It's, we have cooks, and most of them aren't the spy guys. They're all those that help support it. So, and they're running around like they're chickens with their head cuts off. And I finally get a hold of Bob, and I talk to him about what's going on. I get up on top of the rooftop, and I can see in the distance, about a mile away, the gunfire, the RPGs flying across the sky, and I can hear the radio calls of our team now engaging the bad guys. What had happened is they had left when they heard the same thing I did when they said, if you don't get here now, we're all going to die. Bob had already told them to stand down twice, and he told them not to go the third time. But you know what? They weren't going to do that because, you know what? We don't leave anybody behind. We are going to take everyone home, and we're going to help those. And again, it's make a difference in somebody else's life. I couldn't imagine not doing that or not having the opportunity to make a difference in their life and not taking it. That's the thing I couldn't live with. The boys left, got over there. 2 of them went to high ground. The other 3 went down the front road, entered in through the front gate. And when they entered through the front gate of the consulate, and to paint a picture for you, we're talking a compound that's about 8 acres. There's about 40 people, 40 armed insurgents running around. And you have Tig, Jack, and Tyrone come through the front gate. And somebody's going to ask me, I'm sure, how do 3 guys overcome 40 armed insurgents? It's through 2 major things: element of surprise and violence of action. You come through that gate, and if they look like they're a bad guy, you shoot them in the face, and it really takes the fight out of them when they start seeing their friends to their left and right start falling. Well, it was such a surprise to them, and it happened so quick that those that didn't get killed all left immediately out the back gate. Tig and Jack and Ty secured the facility. The State Department security guys came out. Tonto and DB came down from their oversight position, and they started searching for the ambassador. And over the next hour or so, they kept looking for the ambassador in the building where he should have been. They'd found the body of Sean Smith. He had died of smoke inhalation. But they couldn't find the ambassador. And while this is going on, they start receiving gunfire again from the back gate where the bad guys had left out. Tig had made his way up on top of the rooftop, and there was an RPG that came flying over his head. And I got to see all this after I got out of the hospital about 6-8 weeks later. I got to see the drone footage. And you can see Tig coming, and you see this little figure coming across the rooftop, and you see a guy at the back gate, and he steps out and he fires an RPG, which is a rocket-propelled grenade. It's designed to blow up tanks. Steps back, hides behind the wall, loads another one, fires it, goes over top Tig's head again. Goes back and hides again, loads up a third one, and as he steps out, he fires it. And almost simultaneously as he fires it and it leaves the tube, Tig had come up and fired about 8 to 10 rounds. Most of them pass past that RPG and hit the guy, and he dies. And about halfway there, you see the RPG almost literally stop and take a 90-degree turn off into nowhere. Now, what are the odds of that, and is it physically even possible that would happen? No. Again, I think we had a seventh man on our team that night, and that was God looking out for us. When that happened, it took the fight out of the bad guys, and they pulled back out again. Ty had went up to the State Department guys. They'd gotten Sean's body loaded up in the back of their vehicle and said, hey, you guys need to go out, take a left, get back over to the annex. But instead of going out and taking a left, they went out and took a right. And why did that happen? Unfortunately, we are creatures of habit. And every time they would leave the gate, 99% of the time, they'd go out, take a left, drive down to what we called Adidas Road, take a right, and then be out into the city. Okay, how many people drive to work exactly the same way every day? Right? Okay, you do it because it's out of habit. You don't have to think if you're driving that way. You know where every stop sign is. I mean, you can be on your phone texting and not have to worry about it the whole way, right? I don't ever do that. But that's what they did, and that's why they did that, and they ran into an ambush, and they almost got shot up. But luckily, they got shot up. They almost all got killed, but luckily they were in a level 6 armored Toyota Hilux, which saved their life, and they made it back over to the annex. And when they pulled in, you could see the car. It was shot up, probably 40, 50 bullet holes up and down both sides. The front windshield was almost completely peppered with pop marks from AK-47s. And they stepped out of the vehicle, and you could see the fear of where they were almost combat ineffective. One of them was due to smoke inhalation. Scott had been in with the ambassador and trying to save his life, and that's when he got separated, and he was able to get out, but he couldn't find the ambassador when he went back in looking for him. The team leader, he just immediately went inside. The other 3, I grabbed them and I got them put up on some defensive positions that we had previously established. And we did that because we knew that anytime we could get attacked. We had elevated fighting positions in the corners of our compound. We had each rooftop, we had 4 rooftops. Each one had a 50 cal ammo can that was full of magazines for 5.56 preloaded. So if 1 or 2 of us were up there and we had to maneuver, fire and maneuver, we could do that without having to worry about taking ammo with us or running out of ammo. Because that's one thing that the CIA did good is they gave us a lot of ammo. Our team, we had 3 Marines, 2 Navy SEALs, and an Army Ranger. 3 Marines, we had over 60,000 rounds. If you give me 3 Marines and 60,000 rounds of ammo, we can do a lot of damage. That's like a box of crayons to us, right? Let us, in case of emergency, break glass. There you go. We had 2 Navy SEALs, because we wanted to take some pictures and look good. And then we had an Army Ranger that was going to carry water for us. No, I'm sorry, I'm just joking. I got to give my brothers a heck all the time. No. Again, it's that team that was meant to be there because we all worked well together and we did what we had to do, and we all knew, without even talking, we knew how to follow off each other's movements. Well, the rest of the team, after the State Department guys left, they had to make a decision. Do we stay here and try to search for the ambassador? And in an undefendable position, or do we go ahead and fall back because we couldn't find him so far? Let's regroup, see what other assets we can get brought in or that they'll give us. We found that out real quick. 0. But we didn't need them anyways. We had the Lord on our side. That's all that mattered. So they exfil out of there. They come back. They get back over and they fill up. All they did is come in and say, "Where do you got guys?" And I told them where we had guys, and they just filled in the positions that needed to be filled in. And we're starting to feel really good now. They went over there. We've got everybody back alive except for Sean, and we couldn't find the ambassador. Wasn't sure if he was kidnapped or if he was just stuck back in there somewhere and we couldn't find him in that building, if the boys couldn't find him. Well, about that time, we start seeing movement on our eastern flank. We start hearing cars pull up. We look through our night vision, and we can see them starting to mount up a group of people over there. We get a hold of Bob, and we ask him if that happens to be one of the friendly or quasi-friendly militias, February 17th Martyrs Brigade. And he says, no, he don't believe it is. Well, myself, I was in a corner position. Tonto and DB were in an elevated on top of one of the rooftops. Tig had come over to where I was at, and it was about that time they threw an IED over the wall that landed just behind me and Tig and blew up. And that instigated the first attack on our base. It was about 15 to 20 guys had come up, AK-47s mainly, and a few IEDs. But we were doing pretty good because we had infrared scopes, we had lasers, and we had identified all our targets, and we had them in a crossfire. Tig and Tonto were up here, me and Tig were back here, and it was like shooting prairie dogs. I don't know, you guys got prairie dogs out here in Wisconsin? See, I grew up shooting prairie dogs. That was one thing my grandpa taught me to shoot on. He'd give me a box of ammo and say, just, okay, 1 round for each prairie dog. I got in trouble when I come back and I only had one prairie dog and an empty box. But that's how I learned to shoot, and that's what it was like that first one. We were feeling pretty good because every time somebody stick a head up, we'd put a couple rounds into them. Rule number one in my book is anything we're shooting once is worth shooting at least 3 times. Okay? And the reason for that is because, hey, ammo's cheap, life isn't. So you got to take care of it. I've seen too many guys get shot with a 5.56, get back up, especially if they're hopped up on drugs, and get back in the fight on you. So make sure you put them down if you're going to put them down. And that firefight only lasted 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, because I don't think they expected the sheepdog that was guarding this place to have the teeth in it that we did. They expected to run over our base just like they did the consulate. But we were going to make sure that didn't happen. And as we're sitting there, they pulled their dead and injured back. We're starting to feel good again. And that's when we get a call from Glenn Doherty's team. They had been able to acquire a civilian aircraft, loaded up a team because they're the only ones that could get there quick. Took about a 2.5-hour plane ride for them, and they landed at the Benghazi airport, the international airport. The downside to that is the Benghazi airport was occupied and controlled by one of the militias. Now, this one was... They didn't really want to get into a gunfight with us. They just wanted money. And again, thank you for your tax dollars. The CIA uses them real well. We give them to warlords so they don't fight with us. Yeah, I know. It makes you feel good about all them dollars, right? Well, think about it. You guys saved our lives. Thank you. Because they were able to negotiate with that militia to get vehicles and get to us. So they were trying to get to us, and though those militias are sometimes they're a rough negotiator, they knew what was going on. They weren't gonna just give into it right away. They wanted to get as much out of them as they could. Well, while that's going on, we start seeing movement again on our eastern and northeastern flank. This time it's about 2.5 times more. There's probably 20 to 30 people coming this next time. And they're moving up. They're trying to flank our up into our northern area. That's what we call zombie land. And as they're moving up, we're feeling again. I mean, we can identify them. We put a laser on them so everybody knows where they're at. And all of a sudden, the car comes down the dirt road towards our back gate, which was on our eastern wall. And as it comes up, it slides to a stop. A guy jumps out, and I catch him out of the corner of my eye, and he's got his hand back like he's going to throw something. So I just put 3 rounds into him. He falls like a sack of potatoes, and what he was throwing was another IED. He was trying to blow open our back gate. Well, it landed short, and that started the next firefight. Now, this one lasted a little bit longer. It was probably 20 minutes, at least 20, 25 minutes. They kind of stayed in the fight with more guys. But again, I mean, we had them in a crossfire. It was like playing whack-a-mole at the county fair. Again, every time they stick their head up, you're going to put a bullet or 2 in the bad guys. And now we're really feeling good. After that ended, they started pulling their dead and wounded back again. No one had any major injuries. I had gotten some I got some glass in my face because they were trying to shoot out our lights, so I had a few cuts on my face. Tiggy took a ricochet in his side. He was kind of whining about that a little bit, but it wasn't bleeding, so I told him to man up, quit being a wuss. And again, the one thing that was still in our heavy on our mind is we couldn't find the ambassador. They didn't know where he was at. We had called for close air support. We called for a Spectre gunship and anything that they could send. We hadn't got notification that it was coming. They had a drone there. Thank goodness we could see through the drone. Well, it really didn't help because we would ask to see what they saw out there, and by the time it would go all the way back through the radio channels to where the guy that's looking at it and who was flying it and got back to us, we were already in the gunfight. So we kind of gave up on the use of that drone. But again, we were feeling pretty good. So this time now, it's getting it's about 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning. We know Glenn's team is trying to make their way to us. And I had moved off there and went over and got up on the rooftop where Ty was. And when I got up there, Ty was our medic. he went around and started checking everybody, making sure everything was good, because we had a couple guys, the two State Department guys had smoke inhalation, so he wanted to check on them. Tonto had a wall fall over on him when he was trying to climb over it, so he had some scratches and bruises, so check on him. And by the time he comes back up, it was really getting kind of quiet for the night. We're starting to, it's at downtime, and this is when sometimes it's the hardest in those gunfights. It's because your adrenaline's been up here for the last 8 or 9 hours, and now you have that little bit of time and it starts to drop down, and that's when you really feel how worn out you are. But me and Ty were talking about our families a little bit, because he had a young boy that was about a year and a half old. My little girl was 7 months old. We were talking about Tig. Tig had 2 twins that were the same age as my little girl, just about 2 weeks older. Tonto had 3 kids, and Jack had just found out that day that his wife was pregnant with their 3rd child. You start thinking about those things at home and what you've left behind and what you're sacrificing for. But that also at the same time gives you pride and energy, because knowing that we got to make sure we go home. About that time, it's getting on about 5 o'clock, 5:15 in the morning, and Glenn's team rolls up with a militia. They jump out, come in, and all of the guys go into the building except for one, and that was Glenn. Now, see, I didn't know Glenn. Glenn Doherty, I only knew him by reputation, and Glenn was he was a sniper in the Navy SEALs before becoming a contractor, and he was that guy you always wanted on your team, because he always had a smile on his face, and he would bring the morale of everybody up all the time. That's why everyone knew about him. He was born and raised in Boston, served the Navy on the West Coast, loved surfing, loved filming, making movies about the outdoors, and just loved bringing happiness to other people. He had a great soul. He comes up, and that's when he comes over, and Ty introduces me. And I had shook his hand, said, "It's great to have another gunfighter up here. Hopefully we're not going to need you." And they both stepped to my left. And it probably wasn't a minute after that when an RPG hit the back wall right in front of us. And another mortar, the first mortar hit and landed on the wall, the top of the wall. Dave was one of our State Department guys. He was over on the far corner. That's where our ladder to get up and down was. He was kind of pulling security over there. And when that mortar hit, Ty opened up with a belt-fed machine gun. I opened up with my M4. Glenn was moving to try to get some separation, because we didn't all three of us be in the same spot. And as he's moving, Dave took shrapnel from that mortar, and he yells out that he's hit. And everything in your body wants you to go over and help him, because I could see a silhouette of him sitting there holding his head, and you knew that he was injured, and he's yelling out, calling your name, and you want to go over there, but you can't, because if I leave my position, then our perimeter right there is weaker. I've got to take out the bad guys before I can go help them. In our world, we call that self-aid. You got to know how to take care of yourself first. You got to have a med kit on you. You got to be able to put that tourniquet on, stop the bleeding, do all those things. I had to depend on him to take care of himself. We had to take care of the threat. As I turn around and I start firing, I went through my first mag. I knelt down, changed mags, loaded a mag, and as I'm starting to stand back up, I'm about halfway in a crouch when the next mortar hits, and it hit about 15 feet to my right where there's a wall that we were hiding behind, using as cover, and the rooftop. And as I stand up, it kind of knocked me back a little. And I go to bring up my gun, I notice, and finish standing up, and that's when I see Ty in a fetal position at my feet. And he's out of the fight. All in my mind I can think of is I got to get back in the fight, because I know Dave's out of the fight because he got injured. Ty's now out of the fight. Glenn was moving, so he hadn't got into the fight yet. And so I go to raise my gun up, and that's when I bring my left arm up to help aim, and about 6 inches above the wrist here, it was just kind of hanging at a 90-degree angle. A piece of shrapnel that went in, disintegrated the radial bone, about 2 inches of it, shattered the ulna. I just had about 2 pieces of skin kind of holding it on. But luckily, adrenaline, it's a hell of a drug, and that will to stay in the fight. all I could think of was making sure that no one else is able to shoot. I got to keep shooting. So I'm swinging my arm, trying to make it hold my gun while I'm firing. And that's when the next mortar hits. And it was, again, just a little bit further back. It hit and it landed right in front of Glenn as he's moving over that way and took him out. I took some more shrapnel from that, but I knew I still had to stay in the fight. So I kept up there and I started trying to shoot again, and the third mortar hit. Now that was the one that was the first one where I actually felt any pain. And that one, enough of the adrenaline had run off from the first two, felt like I got stung by 1,000 bees. And I kind of figured I better get to some cover because another one's coming, I expected. And if I didn't, I'd probably be dead. So I dove down and got to cover, and lucky for me, again, for whatever reason, they quit shooting mortars at us. Because they had us dead to rights. Everything went completely quiet. Obviously, I can't hear much because I just had 3 mortars go off. Loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. Brightest light I've ever seen. But I know I got to take care of myself because I'm injured. So I sit up, lean up against the wall, and I pull out a tourniquet, and I start to try to put the tourniquet on. But then I see Ty laying out over next to me, and I'm still in my heart wanting to hope that he's alive. So instead of taking care of myself, I go over and crawl over to see if he's up. Also, about that time, I see a shadow come up over the rooftop where the ladder is, and that's Tig coming up there. See, Tig was the hero that night in my mind because he knew that 3 mortars had just landed on the top of that building, and he knew that we were up there, and he knew that we were injured or dead. He didn't care if that mattered to him. He came up there knowing that it could have been another mortar anytime because you can't hear them coming in. The movies do real well, having that nice sound that they make. I couldn't hear a single one of them. Tig comes up, stops by Dave. Luckily, Tig had a bag with him that had 3 tourniquets in it. He took the tourniquets out because Dave had 2 tourniquets in it. I'm sorry. Dave's arm was about blown off like mine, and so was his left leg. Tig got 2 tourniquets put on Dave and saved his life. Then Tig kind of comes over to where I'm at. Now, in case anybody if you guys have heard Tig's story on this, I'll tell you he's lying. This is one part he lies about a little bit, okay? Because see, he says he came over to where I was at because he heard some whining over there. Okay? Now, see, I was over there and I didn't hear none. So I was the one that was there, so I probably have the first-hand account. Tig don't, okay? So I got to clear that up real quick. Well, Tig comes over, and I sat back up at that time, and I'm holding my arm up, and I reached down to grab my tourniquet and try to get it on my arm before it fell down. And Tig kind of come up, and he just stopped and watched me do that a couple times. That's a friend for you. He looks down at me, and he says, you want to keep playing with that thing. You're not going to make it any better. And just a little bit of that dry humor we have in those types of situations. Well, Tig reaches down, grabs that tourniquet, and puts it on. That thing hurt more than any of the shrapnel I had in me. He got that tightened down, stand me up, and he said, "Hey, can you make it over to the ladder by yourself?" And I forgot that rule number 1 when you go into the military: don't volunteer. I did. I'm like, yeah, I can do that, And I did that because I knew that in the back of my mind, I was still hoping that Ty and Glenn were alive, and I knew that Tig would be the one that could save them. So I walk over to the ladder. Now, the ladder is just 1.5 inch square tubing that we'd cut up and welded into a ladder and bolted it up to the side of the building. And we had this box that was about 2 feet high, so you could step up on that just to get up onto the wall to go over the ladder, or go over the wall to get on the ladder. Well, one of the other guys that showed up, one of Glenn's team guys that showed up, and he comes up top of the rooftop and he says, "Hey, can you get down that ladder on your own? Here, let me help you out." I get up there on the wall, and he sits me down on the wall, and the ladder's right there. Well, he turns and walks away because he's going to help the guys. And now I'm sitting there thinking, how in the heck am I going to get onto that ladder, right? It's sitting right here beside me. And my arm's kind of hanging off. Doesn't work too well, and I've got this good one, and bigger than anything is, I don't mind my obituary if it reads, got into a gunfight, killed a bunch of bad guys, got blown up. I can deal with that. I think that'd make my kids proud. But the last thing I wanted to read was, got into a gunfight, killed a bunch of bad guys, got blown up, fell off a roof, and broke neck. Right? I'm not going out that way. I'm not going out that way. So I looked down, I'm like, the first rung's right there, so I figure I can hook my arm around that top rung, and if I just slide off, I'm going to slide down, and my body will turn, and I'll land right on the ladder, right? Makes sense, right? Okay. It made sense to me at the time, at least. Well, Murphy's Law, what can go wrong will go wrong. And everything was looking perfect until my feet were supposed to land on the ladder, and they didn't. They went through the ladder. And but again, hey, I ain't going to fall and break my neck. I had a death grip with this arm, and I was able to hold on, so I didn't fall really down the ladder at all. Was able to get my feet under me, climb down, started walking around the front, ran into another guy that was coming out. He walked me inside, and they laid me down on the floor of the building. He went back out because he was another medic for Glenn's team, headed back up to see if he could help out. Well, while I'm laying there, all the lights are off because all the CIA personnel, they thought that it would, if they had the lights on, it would be, and the door opened, it'd be a target indicator. I was kind of like, they kind of know where we're at, so the lights off ain't gonna matter if they're inside. But they didn't, they're standing there and they're looking at me, and they got flashlights shining in my face, and ain't nobody doing nothing. And I'm like, hey, you guys need to cut my clothes off because I know I've got other injuries. And the only one that responded was that female case officer. Yeah, I was hoping the same thing what you're thinking. She just wanted to see me naked, right? She takes off to the med room, and I just hear things getting thrown everywhere, and she yells out, and she says, Oz, I can't find the medical shears. I'm like, they're in the first set of shelves, third from the top. And the reason for that is anytime I was at any place, I've got the 6 Ps. Anybody know what the 6 Ps are? Prior planning prevents piss poor performance, right? Okay, that's a Marine thing. I would take a water bottle, cut the top off, and I'd tape it near one of our gurneys so I could put 3 things in there that help me, I know will help me save lives. A tourniquet, medical shears, and morphine. She ran in there, grabbed them, comes back, and she's getting ready to, starts to cut my clothes off. Well, in the meantime, our deputy chief of base, he didn't want to be shown up by that female case officer, right? So he pulls out a buck knife and flips it open. Okay, now he says, here, Oz, I'll cut your clothes off. Now this guy's shaking like a dog crapping a peach seed. And again, it goes through my mind what my obituary is going to read, right? I'm like, boss, no, why don't you just hold on? She'll come. I ain't going to bleed out. I know it. I promise. Well, he puts the knife away. I convince him to put the knife away. She comes in. They get my clothes cut off. Found about 25 holes in me. Most of them weren't too bad. I mean, we have this thing, if it's squirting, you stop the ones that are squirting. Don't worry about the ones that are oozing. So we just took care of the squirters. I got hit in the neck. This was about 1 millimeter from my carotid artery. I had about 4 or 5 in my chest. I got a hole about halfway through my sternum. So doctor told my wife that there was one it's about 2 inches from my heart. She's like, what heart? I'm like, that wasn't funny. So we get them all patched up, and that's when they bring Dave down. And Dave is really doing bad. I mean, he lost a lot of blood, and he's in and out of consciousness. They bring him in. They start working on him. Finally, about 7 o'clock in the morning, they'd been able to get Ty and Glenn's bodies off the rooftop. They get them down, and we finally had another militia that came in. And here's the irony of it. The militia that came in and helped escort us to the airport was a Gaddafi loyalist militia. The irony is that the militia that attacked the consulate actually was one that fell under the umbrella of Feb 17 that we supported in overthrowing Gaddafi. That's some of the convoluted intricacies of working and dealing with things in the Middle East. You never know who your friend is until it's too late sometimes. I rode out to the airport in the back of a Hilux pickup truck. It's kind of like a little Toyota Tacoma. Got a picture of it from one of the militia guys. Somehow ABC News had gotten a picture, and I'd seen it on or somebody had seen it on the news, and it's a guy that's laying naked in the back of a Hilux pickup truck. And another guy kind of sitting there kind of pulling security. But we get out to the airport, and they come over, and I'm on a gurney, and they go to try to grab the gurney, and I kind of brushed him back because I knew I could walk. And I had actually told him, I said, I walked into Benghazi, I'm going to walk out. There's no way I'm going to get carried. And so I stood up off the back of the pickup truck, and I walked up to the airplane. As I'm walking up, they had an IV in me, and they were escorting me up there, and there was a female flight attendant. So the aircraft was a private aircraft owned by a Libyan, and he had sent his pilot, co-pilot, and the flight attendant with it to fly Glenn's team down. And as I walk up to the ladder, the stairs that go up, this woman her eyes were like the size of saucer plates. And next thing I know, she just runs to the back. See, I forgot I was naked. So I'm not sure if it was because I was bloody and beaten up, or it's she just the first time she ever saw a white guy naked. I'm not sure what there. So I climb up to the stairs, and she's coming back from the back of the airplane. She's got a handful of towels, and I figure she wants me to cover up. So I go to start to reach out and grab one with my good hand, and she stops and starts laying them down on the floor. See, she had a job, and her job was to make sure that plane came back clean. She was afraid I was going to bleed on the floor. I brush past her, and I go back, and there was a couch in the back. I lay down on the couch, and they load up everybody else, and they get Dave in there finally. It took a bit to get Dave. Dave couldn't walk, obviously. He was in and out of consciousness. They had him strapped to a gurney, and Dave was a big boy. He was about 6'4", 6'5". They tried to get him through that little door and then make that turn into that airplane. Got him in. It was about 9 o'clock, I think, when we took off. But we couldn't load up everybody. Only the non-essential personnel, which was all the CIA personnel. No pun intended. No, they were all great people, but we got everybody loaded except for the shooters. The rest of Glenn's team and the rest of our team stayed behind because we couldn't fit everybody in the airplane. We got in and took off, and now they're waiting for the next airplane to come in. They didn't know exactly what was going to happen or not. Well, about 10:30, C-130 lands, and they're thinking, hey, finally an American aircraft has shown up. But as it comes in, it takes a right turn, and when it takes a right turn, there's a Libyan flag on the tail fin. They go over and park. Well, again, luckily we still had some money in that big bag. So your tax dollars also paid for probably the most expensive C-130 trip to get the rest of the guys to Tripoli. Because they went over and talked to them and told them that, hey, it's probably in your financial interest to fly us there. We'll give you a bunch of money, and I don't know what it was, but that's how we got out. The last guy got out of Libya almost 13 hours to the exact T from when it started. That's why we had the name 13 Hours. The key thing, the takeaway from it is we didn't do it with any help from anywhere else. We did it because there were 6 of us that chose not to lose, to never give up, to stay in the fight. No matter how bad life is, what kind of pile of crap it's given you in the last hour, the last 20 minutes, the last 10 years of your life, you have a choice to do what you want from that point on, and that's either stay in the fight or don't. If you want to stay in the fight, you got to stay in the fight. And that means putting everything into it. This country right now, we're kind of down on our knees a little bit, it seems like, right? Seems like not everybody really believes in what we fought for, what you guys believe in. But does that matter what they do or how they do things are going to affect us? It's a matter of if we decide to stay in the fight. And that fight isn't necessarily a physical fight, because that's the last thing we want is a physical fight like that. But what we have to do is come together, and as Greg said, 2 things. Whether we like the people that disagree with us or not, we got to love them, because one, that's what the Lord commands us to do. when I was getting ready to write the book, when we started to do that, I was on the call with a publishing company, and they asked me, they said, hey, do you, one of their questions was kind of weird. They said, do you hate the people that were trying to kill you? And I'm like, why would I hate them? And they're like, well, they were trying to kill you. And I'm like, I don't have to hate people to kill them, so I don't know why they would hate me. See, that's their reaction too, and I thought, oops, that didn't come out right. But really what I'm trying to say is I can't do that. I can't, and Greg can't, and when we're in that fight, we can't do it with hate. Because if I do it with hate in my heart, then it's an evil thing. Okay? I got to do my job, and that job was to make sure people went home. And they were the people that we were protecting. They were the Americans that we had. And I was going to do that. And I wasn't going to do it out of hate. I was going to do it because, you know what? That's what we have to do. And if you're dumb enough to fight us, then, you know what? I love you for it because I don't mind a fight every now and then either. But truly, that's what it is. I mean, it's this day and age right now, we are in a spiritual war in this country. Because it ain't about the neighbors that disagree with us or those that are down in Green Bay or Milwaukee that disagree with us, because they're just being misled by the same thing that's trying to get us to hate them, right? They're the ones that are falling into that same thing, and the only way that we can fix that is we can love them. We can love those that disagree with us. That doesn't mean we have to like them, doesn't mean we have to agree with what they want or their policies. But what we do have to do is, because this country's kicked the Lord out of everything. We've kicked it out of our schools. We've kicked it out of our lives. We've made church this, and I mean, I hope I don't offend anybody, but Christ was not weak. Okay? There was nothing weak about him, and this level of what the left and we've allowed even some of our preachers and our pastors to talk about this sweet, easy life of Christ. I mean, I told a friend of mine, he's a Navy SEAL and he doesn't have a relationship with the Lord. I said, you know, Christ was a Navy SEAL. He's like, what? I'm like, think about it. The guy walked on water. Okay? He went to Hell Week, right? The Friday he came into Jerusalem was the first day of Hell Week. He had to endure all of that, and then he had to endure carrying a cross up the hill to get hung on it. If that ain't a Navy SEAL, I don't know what is. I says, and then to boot, guess what? He hung out with hookers and thieves and criminals. Now that's a Navy SEAL, right? And I'm not saying that to be light of Christ at all. Because you know what? I love him with all of my heart, and I follow him with everything that I do. Because without him, then I'm no better than the people I was fighting against. And we, as a country, have to come together. John Adams said it best. His greatest fear was that our country become a two-party country, and people's loyalty to the party is more important than their loyalty to the country. Because I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm an American first. Me, along with all these other veterans that have served over the last 246 years, we have fought to protect the values and the rights that this country was founded upon. Those things were written down. Think about this. Our Constitution is 7 pages. 7 pages. Now, if we can't write a bill that's shorter than that, then we are messed up. A lot of the people that were in that compound that worked for the agency, some of them were liberals. Every different race, religion, some Muslims, some not. I've lived with Muslims for off and on for 9 years. I've had some save my life. I've had some try to kill me. But you know what? The thing is we're all there for the right reasons. What we want, of all the countries I've ever been to, it's pretty simple. I want to be able to send my kids to school or send them to town and let them be outside and not get raped, burnt, murdered, blown up, killed, or stabbed, or beaten up. I want to be able to put a roof over my family's head. I want to be able to make $1 and not have the government sticking their hand in my pocket, taking 2/3 of it out to give to somebody else who doesn't want to work. That is worldwide. And whether you agree with my philosophies or my ideologies, you're an American, and I'm going to fight for you and I'll bleed for you, just like every other veteran I know. Because it's the standard that is put in there. It is those that we have to, I fight for the First Amendment, not just because it gives me the right to speak, because it gives you the right to speak against me. Because if I don't have somebody who opposes me in thought, then I'm never going to learn anything. Because I can't, and this is what social media has done to us. Social media has allowed me to be around a bunch of people that think just like I do and reinforce whatever things are going on in my head. And that's the use of the devil too, so be careful of what it is. Understand it, that it's a great tool, but it can be a bad tool as well. Because it divides us. It isolates us. It's like PTS. Makes me stay in my room. I don't need to go anywhere. I can be around a few people that I like, because I don't like a lot of people. I love you guys, but I don't like a lot of people. And that's just because of being around too many people and all the things I've done in my life. I like being by myself a lot. But you know what? We can't let the devil win. We cannot let evil win. We are the only country that has ever existed. Every country before us, every superpower, whatever, has been controlled by a dictator or a tyrant. The United States is that experiment that has never happened and has done so well. And that's those freedoms that we've had. It's that government of the people, by the people, that has made us the strength that we are, the powerhouse that we are, because no other country has ever developed as fast and as strong as we have in such a short time. And it is up to we, the people. It is up to us. One, to love our enemies, love our neighbors, and love ourselves. Forgive each other. Couple things, and I'll probably get this wrong. I'm trying to remember it from by heart, but a couple things we always got to remember. Always remember the things that we do wrong, because it'll make sure that I don't do it again. And I got to remember all of those who have done good to me, because then I'll appreciate my fellow man. And I got to forget all those good things that I've done, because if I keep thinking about them and put my effort on remembering those, all that does is feed my ego and makes me think that I'm something that I'm not. And I've also got to forget those who have done bad things to me, and I've got to forgive them. And if we can do those 4 things, life will be a whole lot better, and we will be a much better country. And we're going to do it, we were talking in the green room a lot of times, and I've heard this a lot, hey, you guys ready to arm up? And we need a civil war. I've seen war. We don't need a civil war, okay? That thing will be fought in our backyards. It'll be fought in our downtown streets, and that is not what we want. We have to fix what's going on, and we can only do that through the grace of God and loving one another and working together and trying to find ways to come together than go apart. Don't have to always agree, don't have to like what they say, but we've got to make it right. We got to fix it. It's like a family that's been separated. It's Thanksgiving. We got to get together and not fight this time, right? Hey, I want to thank you all. I know we've ran over, so I was going to see if anybody wanted to have any questions. I don't know if Kevin? Okay. So I'm going to stick around afterwards. If you guys want to come by, say hi, get a picture, something like that, we'll be up here as well. But if I don't get to see or talk to you, God bless you all. Thank you for being Americans. Thank you for loving this country.